For 9 months, I've been working as a producer for Neil Denigrate, the host of the Denigrate Report on Fox. The attitude of this show totally disgusts me, but working here is the only way I can pursue my dream of a life of artistic freedom in New York.
Wolf, get in here.
Yes, Mr. Denigrate.
Call me Neil.
Yes, Neil.
No, call me Mr. Denigrate.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking for the rundown tonight, Wolf. But first of all, how would you say the show is doing?
The show, sir?
The show is on fire. It's on fire, Wolf. Anytime I ask you, that's what you say.
On fire, sir.
I didn't ask. Did I ask? Only do it when I ask. Now, first segment tonight. Are climate change scientists unpatriotic racists? Here's where I want to go. Who was the British Prime Minister, Neville Tabula?
Chamberlain, sir.
He wanted to give up, right? Let the Nazis invade the Danube or whatever. That's what these scientists are like. They want us to give up our way of life every time a glacier melts. Make sure we have B-roll of that guy, Baba Ganoush.
Chamberlain.
Screw it. I'll deal with it live. Why is it all on me? I ask for support, and all I get is hummus and kebab.
Maybe we can talk about the second segment, sir. Wendy Davis is abortion Barbie. I'm wondering if that goes a little too...
Are we going to do that thing where I propose a pistol duel with chicken shawarma?
Chuck Schumer?
And then the debate at the end. Left versus right. Dennis Miller versus Phil Tandoori, the duck call guy.
Aren't they both on the right, sir?
I don't know. That's what I have research for.
Mr. Denigrate, I have something to say. I've never believed in the things you believe in. This show and this network have to stop dividing America, or I'll have to leave, sir.
Michelle Bachmann is still a good-looking woman. I'd like to clean her whole body with a spanakopita. Were you talking, Wolf?
Never mind, sir. And you mean squeegee. On today's show, hear what it's like to work for a news organization that doesn't share your values. And now, Colin McEnroe.
That NPR wussy talk, pansy, cream puff, wise-ass college punk. He makes me want to spread tzatziki sauce all over Ann Coulter.
All right, I didn't realize I inspired that kind of contempt from the Neil Denigrate show, which I do occasionally watch, actually. He makes some interesting points. All right, so the scenario that you heard there was basically about 8 years in the life of our guest, Joe Muto. He's the author currently of An Atheist in the Foxhole, emphasis on Fox, a liberal's 8-year odyssey inside the heart of the right-wing media. Joe Muto's here in studio with us as we go along. We should say he's going to be at the Twain House tonight, I believe at 7 p.m., to talk about his book, tell his story, and sign copies of said book. That starts at 7 p.m. It's free. And you know where the Twain House is. And we'll be emphasizing that repeatedly as we go along here today. So let's first of all, Joe Muto, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Colin. That intro was scarily accurate.
Well, we should say, actually, this is jumping ahead in the story, but as some people may remember, Bill O'Reilly was named in a sexual harassment lawsuit by a producer on the show, and part of one of the contentions was that he was calling her and talking about how much he wanted to wash her up with a loofah sponge, but he confused that with falafel at a certain point, creating almost a subcategory of American humor in the process. But you were there in the Fox building the day that story broke, right? And you describe in breathtaking with breathtaking suspense what was like you had the smoking gun thing up on your screen as he walked in, right?
I mean, that was I'd been working there maybe 2 months, 3 months when that whole story broke, and I wasn't working directly for O'Reilly at that point, but the entire newsroom at one point was reading this it was very salacious, this lawsuit, and it was very, I don't know how much of it was true, but if any fraction of it was remotely true, it was the funniest thing I've ever read. So I mean, and there was a lot of Schadenfreude in the newsroom, sort of at this thing happening to our biggest star and most sort of feared and sometimes loathed personality.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about. I mean, It is an interesting inside look at the personality of Bill O'Reilly, which, to my way of thinking, is as interesting as his actual political views and the role he plays in journalism. Who he is as a person is amazing in and of itself. But we need to sort of back up a little bit and let's sort of sketch out the bare bones of the story. The bare bones of the story is you're a guy who you get done with college, you have a kind of interest in journalism and politics and stuff like that. You know somebody who knows somebody who's got a possible in with the Fox digital division, and sort of despite your politics, which skew sort of Clinton left anyway, Clinton Democrat,
right.
You wind up working for Fox News, right?
Right, I sort of stumbled backwards into this job, and I went into it with the best possible intentions. I was going to make a go of it, and I was delighted to be in New York City, and I thought I could, push my personal distaste for the politics of the network down, and for many years I was able to do that.
And you thought you were going to work actually for their digital division, but very quickly you got snagged to be a production assistant. Was that the first job?
Right. Yeah, I'd been a film and television major in college, and I had envisioned myself as that I'd write news copy for their website, but they saw me and said, "Oh, this guy's got some video skills. Let's put him on the TV side."
So your odyssey includes a couple of different stops along the way, including a show which I confess I had never heard of until I read about it in your book, The Lineup. Somehow or other I missed The Lineup.
The Lineup, was our a short-lived crime show. And it's sort of in the Nancy Grace vein, I guess you could say, but the host, Kimberly Guilfoyle, was not quite as, tenacious pursuing these stories as Nancy Grace. So that show quickly, I think it also aired it aired at 10 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday night. It's not exactly a prime spot for these shows, but
actually, while we're on this though, it raises an interesting question, which I think is sort of behind some of the scenarios that are in this book too. Yeah, so what they did was that they had a concept, they paired it up with what seems to be this kind of endless supply of attractive blonde women who can be news anchors or show hosts and stuff like that. Whom in your book you talk about the fact that some of them really are. You say Megyn Kelly, for example, is a really serious, smart journalist. She just happens to be really hot. But there's also just this endless other supply of them with varying degrees of intellectual attainment. But it almost seems like maybe the difference between your host of that show and Nancy Grace is every atom of Nancy Grace's being, no matter how depraved I think that show is, every atom of her being is committed to the concept of that show. Whereas it's a little bit harder just to take somebody and marry them up to material.
Right. And then Fox is always doing experiments that don't kind of work out, and Kimberly Guilfoyle is still with the network, and she's on their 5 o'clock show called The Five, which is shockingly popular. It's one of the highest rated shows on the network now. So she found her niche eventually. She wasn't maybe quite adept at hosting a show by herself. She needed that cushion of the 5-person panel.
We should say that the story that we're going to tell here culminates famously or infamously in Joe's decision to become a mole. He can't take it anymore. He offers his services from inside Fox to the website Gawker and becomes the Edward Snowden / Chelsea Manning of Fox News, except it doesn't really last all that long. But we'll try to tell you some of that story as we go along here. As you first of all, I don't watch a lot of this kind of television. I mean, not only do I not watch Fox News, I don't watch MSNBC or CNN or anything like that either, unless it's on at the gym or something like that. But I mean, what I hear about Fox is that when they're not in that evening rotation of these highly politicized show hosts, or not doing Fox and Friends or whatever that thing is that Saturday Night Live is always making fun of, that there's just sort of news coverage, and I mean, I'm aware of Fox News journalists who are just good, solid news journalists, right? I mean, it's not that every single tick of the clock in a Fox News day is all about ideology.
I would argue that in the age of Obama, that's actually sort of what it morphed into. When I started there in 2004, that was more true, is that the prime time was very politicized, but the daytime news coverage was a bit more straightforward. But once, January 20th, 2009, Obama took office, and the entire network sort of, radicalized and went off in a pretty far right direction.
And when Sense is reading the book, that's when the big squeeze starts to come on you too, that you start to struggle more and more with your own role in there. One of the interesting things you say too is that, like a lot of people, in 2008, Fox News was completely unprepared for Barack Obama. They didn't think he was anything more than a statistical outlier initially.
Yeah, they were, people were busy cobbling together, taped pieces about how bad Hillary Clinton is. They're probably, probably had some Vince Foster researchers out there too. And this Obama guy, everyone's like, oh yeah, he's nice looking guy and can give a good speech, but there's no way he can beat the Hillary juggernaut. So it was a shocker to us as much as anyone when he started winning.
By the way, as we go along here, if you have questions, our guest is Joe Muto. The book is An Atheist in the Foxhole, which is about his 8-year odyssey inside Fox News, culminating in his decision to become a mole. Our number, 860-275-7266, 860-275-7266. You may tweet us at WNPR Colin. Well, let me just ask you the question that everybody probably asks you. Given who you are and what you believed and how you'd voted and intended to continue voting, and I mean, you even came clean to coworkers during Obama's rise. Not many coworkers, but you did tell them ultimately you were an Obama sympathizer. You were going to vote for Obama. Given who you were, how hard was it for you to come to work every day and do this other stuff?
It got increasingly difficult, and it was at various points harder than others. When I was on that crime show, for example, there was no ideological bent to that crime show. It was anti-criminal, it was anti-murderer, I guess, but it wasn't like not anything about Obama. But as we got further and further into the Obama administration, and I could see that, the hysteria, the anti-Obama hysteria was not subsiding. If anything, it was getting worse. I knew I couldn't sit through another election season with, at Fox News and still look at myself in the mirror every day.
So we should give people sort of an example or tell a story or two here. What are the things that you had to do? We're sort of once again skipping ahead in your odyssey, but at a certain point you wind up going to work for Papa Bear, Bill O'Reilly. One of the things that O'Reilly does, he's not the first to do it, is occasionally do these kind of ambush segments where he sends somebody out to just to take somebody else by surprise. So you got assigned, or you volunteered actually, to be part of an ambush on Rosie O'Donnell. I'll let you pick up the story from there.
Well, Rosie had been – this was shortly after her tenure on The View. She had sort of washed out of there by saying she had spouted some 9/11 conspiracy theories. And she had also talked about O'Reilly's harassment lawsuit, which got his attention right away, obviously. So he'd been planning this ambush of her. It had been months in the making, I think. And our main ambush guy, a guy named Jesse Waters, still there, still does ambushes for Bill, and does a good job. You can argue about the journalistic ethics of ambush interviews, but he's one of the best in the game at it. But he needed some help on this on this interview or on this ambush. So we went and we got her at a bookstore
at a book signing.
At a book signing.
Watch out tonight, Joe.
I know. I know. I would not be surprised.
Payback is hell.
I would not. It'd be my just desserts if they ambush me tonight, but I don't think they will. But we waited in line with O'Reilly told us dress up nice, don't look like maniacs, just try to blend in with the crowd. So we're there, two guys in our 20s. We're wearing khakis and blue blazers, and meanwhile we're surrounded by like middle-aged ladies and. in tracksuits, it wasn't exactly. We sort of misjudged what the surrounding crowd would be, but we waited in line for a couple hours. There were 1,000 people there waiting to get their book signed by her, and we got up to her, and I pulled the camera out of my little shoulder bag and started taping as Jesse asked her questions, and she was game at first. She played along, and then he started asking the 9/11 conspiracy stuff, and her goons sort of removed us from the premises pretty quickly.
Well, actually, this segment in the book is kind of interesting, too, because it really does kind of go into the anatomy of one of these ambush things. Because, first of all, one of the points that you make is that she has no choice but to be somewhat nice because ultimately you're creating video. First of all, she can't have goons, shove their hands in front of the lens. She can't, because that's exactly what's going to work. That she has to she has to give you and the Bill O'Reilly show as little to work with as possible.
Right. It's sort of a lose-lose scenario for the person being ambushed. Because if they answer your questions, then O'Reilly wins. And if they pitch a big fit and have you thrown out of the venue, then that's even better video. That's our promo, for that night's show. Why won't Rosie O'Donnell why won't she come on the show and talk to us?
And we should stop there and say that's another point that you make, that the approach is often, why won't you come on the show? As opposed to jumping ugly with somebody right away, like, what about your 9/11 conspiracy theories? Instead, it's, why won't you come on the show? Because that's sort of a nicer overture.
Right. And that's our fig leaf too, is we, that's always our reason for ambushing them, as we would say. We say, well, we asked you, we invited you to come on the show, you wouldn't come, so obviously we had to come find you. That's our veneer of journalistic respectability that we used to put on.
And you said that O'Reilly frequently will send people out to do that or use that fig leaf in situations where, in fact, he really doesn't want the person on the show at all. It's just something to say.
Right. And one time we actually ambushed someone without, someone forgot to actually invite them to be on the show. So we said, we invited you to be on the show. And the guy said, no, you didn't. Why are you at my front door?
All right. We're talking to Joe Muto. His book is An Atheist in the Foxhole. He will be at the Mark Twain House tonight to read, talk, sign, do all those book things, 7 p.m. You should come see him. This is about his time, kind of not exactly living a double life, but living a complicated life, shall we say, as a person with liberal political inclinations while working for Fox News. If you have questions about this, 860-275-7266. 860-275-7266. One question that I received via email earlier today, and it's one that I think a lot of people who are not sort of diehard Fox fans wonder, is to what degree. And it's clearly, reading your book, I mean, the answer is this is going to vary a lot from person to person and from show to show and from host to host. But people sort of wonder, to what degree is this all simply about creating a kind of product that will amass terrific ratings and make money irrespective of the content? And to what degree is everybody there a true believer in the content itself? So, I mean, what emerges from your book is a pretty complicated answer to that question.
I think the answer to that question is it's sort of both, like it's run by Roger Ailes runs the network, and he's a Republican operative. He's literally helped Nixon get elected, helped Bush Sr. get elected, and went into television. He's a media consultant. So he's got skin in the game, and he wants to see Republicans get elected and see this conservative ideology get spread to the mainstream. But at the same time, he was put in charge of this network by Rupert Murdoch, who is also, his ideology leans that way, but he also loves money, and he loves making money. And Fox News does make a lot of money. It gets good numbers, and it's a win-win thing for them, I think.
But it also, one of the interesting little schisms that you document in the book is this notion that, for at least to a certain degree, a guy like Sean Hannity is a little bit more of a cherished son for Roger Ailes, because Sean Hannity is much less likely to break with the party line. I mean, you pretty much, if you follow any news issue, you pretty much know what Sean Hannity's talking points are going to be on a given night. And then they become the talking points for lots of other people who have smaller market talk radio shows. But O'Reilly, because he's a little less predictable, because occasionally he'll go on his own script, which doesn't necessarily fit the standard issue for Fox News, he actually was not, even though he was this gigantic star. He wasn't the kind of favorite son that Hannity was.
No, yeah, Ailes does not love him, because O'Reilly does sort of go his own way a lot of the time on certain issues, and will, stick to his own internal logic. Whereas someone like Hannity's more of a hack, really. He doesn't. He'll turn around and reverse viewpoints on a regular basis just to stick to the Republican line. Whereas O'Reilly tries, doesn't always succeed, but tries not to contradict himself on a daily basis. And Ailes prizes loyalty, and O'Reilly ultimately knows where his bread is buttered, so he won't openly defy Ailes and the other executives. But they get a lot of pushback. If you try to push him in a direction he doesn't want to go, he'll make it a nightmare for you.
Yeah, and I've now lost the detail, but there is at least one story in your book about how. I know what it was. It's when O'Reilly wants to talk about the way in which the bailout is being mischaracterized by some right-wing talk show hosts, and that he has a different take on it, and he refers to these talk show hosts with their fancy cigars and their private jets and stuff. And he wants to do that. And he's pretty obviously, singling out Rush Limbaugh in this way. And there is pressure to get that out of the script, and they eventually win, right? They beat him down.
That's true. He wanted to, I think, replay the actual radio rant that he had given that afternoon on the TV show that night, and Ailes stepped in and said, "No, you cannot, you cannot attack even a veiled attack. You cannot attack Rush Limbaugh on this network. Ailes and Limbaugh are friends. Hannity and Limbaugh are pretty close. O'Reilly and Limbaugh can't stand each other. They're very alike in many ways. I think those two. They're very no shortage of ego on either side there. So that's probably part of the reason they can't stand to be in the same room with each other. But Ailes stepped in and said, This is going to happen. This is I'm the boss, and take this out of the show." And O'Reilly pitched a big fit and did a nice cursing jag behind the closed door of his office. But he went on TV that night and did what he was told.
His ability to take advice from anybody seems pretty limited in this book. There's a story that we can't really tell here on Nice Public Radio. You're going to have to either buy Joe Muto's book or go to the Mark Twain House. If you go to the Twain House tonight, ask him to tell you the story of the fake name on an email that that Bill O'Reilly wanted to read on the air. It's very funny, and the adaptation that's made is even funnier. But you may have actually already seen this on YouTube, because I gather it went kind of viral. But anyway, his inability to listen, even to reason in a situation like that, is pretty funny. Why don't we grab a break here? If you want to call in, our number 860-275-7266, 860-275-7266. We'll be back after this.
Look at me, I am where you will never be. People say I will be here eternally. Well, I guess that they may be right. I just sit there all day and night. I'm a mole,
We're back. We're back with Joe Muto. He's the author of An Atheist in the Foxhole, a liberal's 8-year odyssey inside the heart of right-wing media. Got a bunch of things I want to talk about in this segment. If people have questions, comments, 860-275-7266. You can tweet at us at WNPR Colin. You'll be tweeted back by Greg Hill. I just want to quickly pause a little bit and talk about Bill O'Reilly as a person. The portrait of him that emerges in your book is kind of the portrait that I think everybody expects. I mean, in a weird way, you're expecting this kind of irascible, sometimes irrationally angry person whose ego is just completely out of control, and who is more about himself than he is about any particular party ideology or anything else. And so then, I mean, that's who he presents himself to be on the air, and then you expect the behind-the-scenes thing to have some new wrinkle on it that actually he's not like that at all. He's the sweetest guy in the world. He's the, and that's just not.
I don't know if anyone expected that.
Well, but it sounds like perception and reality, performance and backstage reality are pretty much the same thing.
He, more than anyone, I think, that I worked with in my whole time at that network, was so like his on-air persona. His on-air persona is what he's like behind the scenes. Although I would say on air he's a lot more gregarious, maybe, outgoing. Like behind the scenes, he's very he could be dour and not quite not quite friendly, let's say. I guess.
Well, your description of a pitch meeting where all the producers are getting together and you've all got lists of ideas and things that he could talk about, things that you might even be pretty proud of, that you found this one thing that you don't think Hannity or Greta Van Susteren or anybody else have. But it seems like there is this bullying quality even there, that he's almost looking forward to the opportunity to tell you that your idea is stupid and that you are wasting his time.
I mean, I think I think I think that was the highlight of his week, was shooting down our ideas one by one, and bringing producers to the verge of tears. It's tough to and I don't. he's number one in cable news for a reason. He does have very exacting standards. That's fine. But, it is a nerve-wracking proposition to face. It's like facing a firing squad to give your ideas to him.
It also struck me that it would be very difficult to caricature him, even as Stephen Colbert has sort of essentially managed that feat. But the real him would be harder to caricature simply because there's so many things about him that are already at the level of caricature. I mean, even this notion that, you should tell the story about the wrong cheese on the sandwich.
Oh, my God.
So this is a guy, just to set the stage, and one of the things that you say that O'Reilly does is, though he puts in a very long day, he doesn't put a lot of it in. He's only there in the building with you for about 4 hours or something. He's doing a lot of the other work remotely. But when he shows up, one of the things he wants lunch brought to his office, and he wants a real basic kind of lunch.
Yeah, and he's not a fancy guy. And to his credit, he's not. A lot of his colleagues are dining at fancy power seat restaurants in Midtown Manhattan. No, he just wants a sandwich and a soup at his desk. Normal guy. And his assistant brings it to him, and she's a lovely and long-suffering woman. She brought him a sandwich from, it must have been Quiznos or one of those, some rinky-dink deli in Midtown. Who even knows? But they got the cheese wrong on the sandwich. So he noticed. He called her up and he said, "Hey, look, I want you to take this sandwich. I want you to bring it back to the deli. I want you to tell them you made it wrong and give it back to them and get the money back and tell them I said they made it wrong and make sure they know. Tell the manager." And she
said, "Do you want them to give you the right sandwich?" And he said, "No. Tell them Bill O'Reilly said they made it wrong and we want the money back."
Right. And that place was off his list from then on. And I don't know if his assistant went and actually did that. She's pretty soft spoken. I doubt she did, but I seem to recall him asking about it later. Ask if she actually did that. So he followed up. He remembered, you return this sandwich with extreme prejudice.
And that there is obviously this neurosis. He's full of bluster and braggadocio, but it seems like what's underlying this is this tremendous fear that it's all going to come crashing down, it's all going to fall apart. That's the reason usually people impose their will on other people at this extreme level. And I think that turns up when you talk about his obsession, and it's not unique to television. I'm not singling out Bill O'Reilly. This is the way television works. But his obsession with ratings, describe what it's like when the sheet comes out every day that has the ratings on it.
Well, it's like he treats it like it's a tablet handed down from from the mount, and he studies it with a magnifying glass almost, because it's just these little tiny columns of numbers, and every day at 4:30 in the afternoon we get the ratings from the previous day's shows, and they break it down. There's a million different ways to slice the data, as I'm sure you know, but they can break it down by age group. They break it down by into quarter hours, so 15-minute increments. So if he sees something, something dropped, something's higher than it should be, something's lower than it should be, he investigates, and he's like, why did we lose 200,000 viewers yesterday between the 30-minute mark and the 45-minute mark? What was going on there? And if he thinks, oh, we had that one guest on, I guess people didn't like that guest, so we can't have him on the show anymore.
Yeah, ever.
But it's not an exact – ratings is not an exact science. They can only, in the best case scenario, really only sort of estimate what's going on. So a lot of these fluctuations are just statistical noise, but don't, try telling that to him.
So we should move ahead a little bit in this story and say at a certain point, and a lot of it had to do, I think, with the network's characterization of President Obama, you started to get less and less comfortable with your role, and you really decided that this really wasn't the right place for you. You decided that the website Gawker might be a really good place for you to go to work. But you felt like you had something that you could also share with them. First, I'll let you pick up the story from there.
I'd always been a fan of Gawker, and I'd always wanted to work for them, to write for them. And so I approached them. I sent them an email and just said, "Hey, I work at Fox News, and let's meet." I didn't tell them who I was. I didn't want to just send my name out there to a random tips email box. So we met up with them, and I showed the guy. The guy's name is John Cook. He's no longer with them, but he was their editor in chief for a while. I showed him my business card. This is who I am. This is who I work for. His eyes bugged out of his head because he'd been sort of on their O'Reilly beat for a few years and their Fox News beat. And, here was this guy delivering, this info to him on a platter. And he was, they got pretty excited about it. But my intention was never to go to, or at least not at first, was never to go to Gawker and say, hey, let me be a spy within the company. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to go to them and say, hey, look, I can't stand it here anymore. I'm leaving the company. When I leave, I would like to come work for you. Let's talk about that. And it was sort of their idea to say, well,
how would you like to come work for us before you leave?
Exactly. And I wasn't, even though I was 30 years old at that point, I was a little naive, and I said, yeah, great idea. What could go wrong?
Well, and you were very careful about this, and I won't say there's some, we won't do too many spoilers for the book because there's some interesting things about how you actually did get tripped up. But one of the things that you were offering them was just kind of funny behind-the-scenes video, right? Well, I mean, one was funny, one had maybe a little bit more substance to it. The first one was you had some behind-the-scenes video just of Newt Gingrich getting his hair done, right?
It was Newt Gingrich and his wife is this interesting looking, or Callista is her name. She's got this great blonde like helmet of hair on her, and she's kind of like icy robotic looking. So we had this great clip of her doing his hair, like spraying him down with the spray bottle and the brush, and like sort of it's obviously not not the Pentagon Papers that that I'm leaking, but it was funny, and I thought the Gawker readers might be interested in it. And,
I mean, because usually if a guest is coming on, you have a makeup department there at Fox News. They handle the person's. It'd be unusual for somebody's spouse to be there.
Right. It the way she was doting on him seemed a little silly to me, and it was just an amusing clip. There was nothing there was nothing more. There wasn't a lot of thought that went into it.
So you had that, and you had sort of an off-air conversation going on between Mitt Romney and Sean Hannity. Although there you really did feel like there was a little bit of substance, at least sort of a revelation of hypocrisy, right? There's first Romney's talking about his horses and stuff like that. But then they have a little conversation where Hannity's giving him advice about how to use a teleprompter, right? Or that he should use a teleprompter.
Right. Hannity went from making fun of Obama using a teleprompter in one breath to advising Romney to do the exact same thing in the next breath. So I thought it was it was a little bit hypocritical, and it was also just more than anything interesting to see how these two related to each other off air, because it was Romney was sort of coming off this contested primary where the conservatives had never really embraced him, and here was Hannity as sort of the symbol of the conservative media world, and he was it was an uneasy alliance, but they were it was interesting to see them relate to each other.
So you had that stuff, but my sense also is that you had, in college you'd written sort of a funny, smart alecky kind of student newspaper column, and it was kind of a voice. It's the 30-year-old version of that, or however old you are now, version of that is the voice of this particular book, too. A sort of funny, smart alecky, wise guy kind of comic prose that you wanted to write. And my sense is that if you were going to do this collaboration with Gawker and maybe stay long-term as the Fox mole on the Gawker website, the fun of it was not going to be leaking these videos out. The fun of it was going to be developing a certain voice where you were going to tell stories and kind of in your own unique way make fun of what was sitting there right before your eyes.
Exactly. The idea was never to say, look at these groundbreaking things from behind the scenes at Fox. It was more of just like a slice of life thing, like what's going on at Fox today, and sort of a funny, gossipy, snarky look at the various, the clash of the various personalities within the network. That was always what the intention was. It was never like, look at these bombshells from information that the public doesn't know.
The analogy you made was one dear to my heart, was that you were going to be John McClane, the Bruce Willis character from Die Hard, inside the skyscraper, barking little taunts and wisecracks and insults to and otherwise tormenting the other people inside the building. And once again, I don't want to give away sort of too much here, but it didn't last that as long as you really thought it was going to, and ultimately you were shown to the door Did you get in a lot of trouble for this? I mean, I know that, a couple of days after you were kicked out of the building, police came to your house and to your apartment and stuff. I mean, did bad things happen to you as a result of all this?
I mean, it was no walk in the park. Actually, it was a walk in the park because one of the things I was assigned to do was to clean up a park in Lower Manhattan. Fox, when they found out this book was coming out, hit the roof, and for obvious reasons, and decided that the way to get back at me would be to press charges over the dumb video clips I leaked. So they somehow convinced the Manhattan DA to go along with them, and I ended up pleading to a misdemeanor charge based on the.
They were saying this is larceny, basically, that you stole something.
Right.
And so, is that really true? You had to clean up a park?
Oh yeah, I was sentenced.
Service?
I was sentenced to 10 days of park cleanup and then 200 additional hours of community service. And the park cleanup was funny because I was in there with there's a lot of drunken hijinks people on the park cleanup duty. Guys like, I got drunk and I took a whiz on the subway tracks, and that guy got 3 days. I got 10 days. The guy who got drunk and stole a taxi cab, that guy got 5 days. I got 10 days. So clearly, their priorities are very much straight there.
You're the most serious offender among them. It's like there's sort of an Alice's Restaurant quality to all this. All right, we've our number 860-275-7266. We're talking to Joe Muto right now. His book is An Atheist in the Foxhole. David from Hamden, I can hear him making something in his microwave. It's probably Hot Pockets. David, you're on the air.
Yes. Hi, Colin. Actually, I was in college with you a long time ago, and I'm calling because I understand you guys are talking about Bill O'Reilly.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed the beginning of the show. I apologize. But I've been offended by his columns in the New Haven Register for the last 5 or 6 years. And I've started to study them and try to analyze them. And I've come to I want to know I want your opinion about, and your guest opinion about whether I'm crazy or not. But I feel like he has a kind of ideological poison he practices on purpose, because I don't think he's stupid. He usually says 4 or 5 things that are defendable or just logical or correct. And then he hits somebody like President Obama or somebody who's involved in progressive politics and jumps on them. And the reader's supposed to think because A, B, and C, and D are correct that these points are correct.
All right, David, I think we could get the drift of your questions. You've kind of addressed this a little bit, but the way that he asks it, I mean, it also can be extended pretty easily into the broadcast realm, both the radio show and the TV stuff. It would be possible for O'Reilly to make his points in a nicer way. I assume that the reason that he yells shut up, and calls people idiots and turkey heads and stuff like that is just, I mean, some of it is sheer showmanship.
Oh, yeah.
And some of it is just that's what his personality is.
It's a show, and he knows, part of it is his personality. He just likes to yell, and part of it is showmanship, and his audience loves it when he goes off on a pinhead, as he would call them, and that's part of his persona, and a lot of his audience is sort of the reason they watch the show is for him to blow up at someone, and preferably someone who deserves it in their mind.
I mean, I think some of this, too, not to get too Marshall McLuhan about all this, but Frank Rich has a really interesting piece in New York Magazine, I think it's the current issue, about comedy and how conservative comedy, it's not that it doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist in the same way that mainstream comedy seems to skew pretty heavily left of center. And I do feel as though within, and then but he could also investigate the possibility that there are more conservative comedians than people realize, but after a while you got Dennis Miller and you got Jeff Foxworthy and you don't gotta have too many of them. It does seem as though each ideology, the way it's expressed in mainstream media these days, has a style, and the style of conservatism is, rather than being sort of Chris Rock funny or Louis C.K. funny, is to be this kind of cartoonish bullying version in which there sometimes is a little bit of humor embedded. I don't even really know what question I'm asking you, but just respond to my ramblings.
Well, that is sort of the, editorial persona that Fox News as a whole developed. I mean, O'Reilly developed it along with them. I mean, when he started when the network started. He was one of their first shows, and he was this. He was not as much of a shouter. He was not known for that from the beginning. He was more of like a, it was a lot more small bore. He loved talking about gangster rap. He was more like sort of the moral police than he was sort of a ideological person. But as the network developed and as his ratings went up, that just sort of became that's the persona he fell into.
I think also, though, I mean, first of all, I should lay my cards on the table. I, for 16 years, worked. I sort of was, you and I are sort of blood brothers in a way, in the sense that I was on the air on what was an otherwise completely conservative talk radio show. I had a show, and my politics were out in the open. They are way left of center. And I was the lead-in to Rush Limbaugh on that station for about 6 years. And then I had the show after, the drive time afternoon show, after Rush Limbaugh for 10 years. And one of the things that I concluded was that, at least conservative talk radio, it's a medium that is about anger. And it's always been that way. And I think a lot of it is, it's people in cars and they're stuck in traffic and they're mad, and they've had a crappy day and they didn't sell as many widgets as they thought they were going to. And the highway's backed up and they're really angry and they want somebody to blame.
Right. And the entire premise of Fox News is based on that, is based on this sort of, white, rural anger that, the world, not just the world, but America is rapidly changing, and I think it scares a lot of these people, and they're looking for that like reassurance that the change is reversible, and that if only stuff were like it was in the good old days, then America would be great again. Fox News is pushing that line all the time. And obviously, it's a false narrative. There was no good old days. There's no such thing as that. But Fox can point to the others. The immigrants, the liberal college professors, the homosexual agenda. Point to all that stuff and point a finger and say them. Those are the others. Those are the ones you're supposed to be mad at. Those are the ones keeping you and your white heterosexual Christian family down. Well, I'm getting angry here, stirring myself up like O'Reilly.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with our final segment. If you want to call in, 860-2757-266.
Hillary Clinton, brain damage, done deal. But how about the rumors she got her concussion during a mixed martial arts catfight with Elizabeth Warren?
All right, that's it. You cannot say stuff like that. You've turned into the very thing you claim to despise. A strutting blowhard, trafficking in half-truths and outright lies.
Really? I didn't mean to be bad. I just wanted to save the country.
Of course you did. Sit over there and have some pita bread. Today's show was produced by Betsy Kaplan and me. Greg Hill appeared in the intro and tweets for us at WNPR Colin. The part of Bill Curry was played by Greta Van Susteren. For show pages, articles, and proof that the Faith Middleton Show staff is a bunch of commie-kissing, pinko, tree-hugging, closet Canadian bedwetters, visit our website, WNPR.org. On tomorrow's show, Alan Yu's salute to comic books. And now, back to Colin.
It's actually been fun to sort of write in that vein today. It's not a voice that we get to use that often here. We're talking to Joe Muto. He's going to be at the Mark Twain House tonight at 7 p.m. to read and talk about his book, An Atheist in the Foxhole, a liberal's 8-year odyssey inside the heart of the right-wing media. So go there tonight. It's free. You can get the book signed by Joe. Our number, 860-275-7266. Of course, late in the show, people start to call up. That always happens. I just want to, and you've had a chance to pull back from this. You did wind up leaving Fox, going to work for Gawker. Now I understand you're not at Gawker anymore. Even today, I was sort of thinking about your book, and then I went over and looked at Gawker today. And so one of the things that Gawker's jumping on is an essay in the Washington Post saying that the Santa Barbara shooters are influenced by Seth Rogen movies and Judd Apatow movies like Neighbors, and that sort of touches off this. You've seen this so many times in your job. This huge ping pong match then just starts. Where it just like everybody's chiming in from this or that hyper conservative website or this or that hyper liberal website. There's an almost complete vacuum of corroborating information about any of this, like whether this guy has ever seen a Seth Rogen movie in his life. And of course, Seth Rogen and Judd Apatow are tweeting about this, and there's this. It's like a cage full of birds that are just squawking in this cacophony. I mean, now that you can step back from it a little and you're working in a slightly different field, I mean, does it seem kind of depressing and just like not just Fox News, but the whole thing, the whole birdcage?
Well, yeah, the entire cable news industrial complex exists as an outrage stoking machine. And, Fox is probably the worst offender, but, MSNBC, CNN are probably just as guilty of it. And there's this, constant casting about for, the new scapegoat of the day. And this, I'm not familiar with this. The Santa Barbara shooter. That's a terrible story. And of course, we're looking for someone to blame. And apparently today's flavor to blame is Judd Apatow, which makes no sense
whatsoever
to anyone.
But it seems as though it exists outside any real search for the truth. I mean, I know that O'Reilly, to a certain, the little tape thing that we just played had a little joke in it that actually derives from your book. There's actually a moment where O'Reilly announces that he's going to do a 25-part series about everything that's wrong with Barack Obama, and that he's going to save the nation. He's going to save the country by doing this. And he means it, right?
He meant it. He thought when I said Obama caught Fox News by surprise, it really did. And people did not know what to make of him. They're like, is this guy – after the Reverend Wright thing came out, people were like, oh, man, this guy's a radical. This guy's going to, turn us all into, Russia. It's going to be Red Square in the middle of D.C. And O'Reilly really did think when he said we're going to bring this guy down and we're going to save this country, he really did think that that's what he was doing, that by bringing down Barack Obama, he was going to save the country from if you remember in 2008, things weren't going so hot at the tail end of Bush's presidency there. So I don't know what he thought he was going to save the country from, but,
Well, the country did need saving, and we've read about that part. Here's Beth in West Hartford. Hi, Beth.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
I don't know if this has been discussed. I'm a little late to the conversation, but I was listening about Joe's stint, spy stint is what I'm thinking. And by the way, politically, I'm a liberal. Certainly, Fox is my enemy. So this is not born out of any interest in defending Fox. In terms of what you did in terms of, spying, so to speak, was from an ethical standpoint, did anything cross your mind? I mean, I'm thinking.
Yeah, you're asking basically.
I don't know that I would ever want to hire you for whatever it may be.
Okay, good question. I just don't want us to run out of time. So, her question: did you wind up feeling bad about any of this?
Absolutely. That is a totally fair question, and it's something. If you read the book, it's something that I struggled with. That this decision was sort of not very well thought out. It was spur of the moment. And it was never intended to be. I think mole is sort of a misnomer. I was not going to be this guy just handing out confidential information. I wanted to write a column that was just sort of a slice of life, what it's like to be this conflicted liberal inside of Fox News. I wasn't going to rat out all my coworkers. And if you read the book, I don't think that's what the book is either. And I think there is a real sense that I'm, struggling with this. And as I said before, there were consequences. There were legal consequences. So that is a good question. It's a totally fair question. It was not something that, I think I would repeat. So, yeah, totally fair question.
All right, we're out of time, but thanks to Joe Muto for coming in here. Go to the Twain House tonight, 7 p.m. He'll be there with his book, An Atheist in the Foxhole. He'll be willing to answer even more questions. You can find out things that we didn't have time to cover today, like the meteoric rise and fall of Glenn Beck. One moment he was riding high, the next, where did he go? You'll find out a little bit more about that if you ask Joe tonight. Thanks for being with us today. All right, and we will be back tomorrow. It's actually, with Alan Yu's comic book show, How Comic Book Nerds Became Mainstream Culture.
Girls are tied to Fox News and Friends.
I'm Kyone Wolf. Bill O'Reilly wrote a book about the killing of Jesus, and I really appreciate his new research. I mean, who knew that Obamacare was such a big problem even back then?